The moment the man was hit by a bullet in the virtual shooting game, a sharp pain unexpectedly spread along his nerves to his real body. He clutched his chest, fell to the ground, and his clothes were soaked with cold sweat. In the end, he lost his breath because the physiological disorder caused by the pain was not treated in time. No one could have imagined that the thing that took his life wasn't a real bullet, but a brand new virtual reality game claiming to be ultra-immersive. In the future, with highly advanced technology, shooting games have long become the mainstream of mass entertainment. To seize the market opportunity, a top technology company spent several years developing a virtual shooting game that disrupts the industry. It is no longer limited to simulating sight and sound, but instead attempts to break the boundary between the virtual and the real. To ensure the game's stability, the company selected 8 players with different backgrounds from across the country and invited them to participate in the closed beta test. Jack was one of them. A hangover from the previous night almost made Jack miss this special invitation. When he arrived at the game company, there were already 6 people waiting in the lobby. Mary, a girl in casual clothes with a gentle look, Jason, a man with a strong build and well-defined arm muscles, and David, who stood straight and had a calm aura about him. When the elevator door opened, Aaron, who was playing with a game console in his arms, walked out. Finally, with Jack included, all 8 players had arrived. Before the game started, a mechanical prompt sound came from the loudspeaker. All players are requested to store their electronic devices and personal items in the designated lockers, and put on the motion capture suits provided by the company to enter the game scene. Everyone did as instructed. They also gradually got to know each other while putting on the suits. Mary smiled and said she was a hospital nurse, and usually liked to relieve work stress through games. David mentioned that he had served in the military in the Middle East, and was no stranger to operating shooting games. After all preparations were completed, the players followed the instructions and walked into the game capsule room next door. 8 silver instruments were neatly arranged in the center of the room. After everyone stood on them one by one and entered their identity information, each person received a custom-tailored game suit. The staff explained, this suit is equipped with the highest level all-round on-site perception system, and combined with advanced haptic feedback technology, which can accurately simulate tactile sensations, such as being hit by a bullet in physical collisions, and can even automatically adjust its tightness according to the wearer's body shape. To ensure a full sense of immersion, 7 players quickly put on their game suits. Only Bob, who was standing at the end, hesitated to move. He stared at the black print on the suit that read Terrorist Number 1. His face grew paler by the second. This code name is so unlucky. I don't want to play anymore. I want to quit. No one stepped forward to stop him. But when he turned to pull the door open, he found that no matter how hard he tried, the door wouldn't open. Bob banged hard on the door and shouted, but there was no response from outside. Stop wasting everyone's time. Jason, standing behind him, frowned in annoyance. The game's start time was fast approaching, and he didn't want one person's hesitation to hold everyone back. At this moment, Lisa walked over to comfort Bob. Persuaded by Lisa, Bob clenched his fists and finally gave in. He took a deep breath and put on the game suit that had been making him uneasy. When everything was finally ready, the scene in front of everyone's eyes transformed into a warehouse. The game suits on their bodies disappeared, replaced by camouflage uniforms. The realism of the scene was unbelievable. To confirm he was in the virtual world, Jack first reached out and touched the wine bottle in front of him, then took off the mask on his head. When he saw that the scene in front of him was still the original laboratory, he finally felt relieved. Just as everyone was getting excited, an officer suddenly appeared. Unsure whether the person in front of them was real or not, they took off their masks, and only then confirmed that he was a virtual character in the game. Shortly after, under the officer's guidance, each person received their own weapon, and then he explained the rules to everyone. It turned out that each person would have 2 chances. If hit by a bullet, the first shot would pierce their body armor. After saying that, the instructor even fired a shot at Bob and Jason first as a demonstration. Even though it was just a virtual game, the pain felt incredibly real, and once the body armor was gone, players would be injured if hit by just one more shot. At that point, they would have to use a first aid injection to recover, otherwise, they would be eliminated from the game. Currently, the entire building was surrounded by terrorists from the game, and the players needed to clear the levels from the 25th floor down to the 1st floor. There would only be one winner in the entire game. Whoever eliminated the enemies and reached the 1st floor first would receive a $100,000 reward. When the prompt sound announced the start, David took the lead and started the game. The group moved cautiously through the building, and enemies soon appeared. Thanks to David's quick reaction, he quickly took down the enemy, and his score temporarily ranked first. The group didn't waste any more time, and under David's leadership, they moved to the next floor. As soon as they walked out of the stairwell, they found a supply point, and the crates inside contained more powerful rifles. After distributing the supplies, the system prompt sound rang out again, and the group immediately set off. However, this floor had significantly more terrorists, yet Aaron and 3 others, holding rifles, left their teammates behind and split up to act on their own. After struggling to find an enemy, Aaron turned out to be a terrible shot. He emptied his entire magazine without hitting a single shot. Just as the enemy was about to counterattack, David luckily appeared, saved Aaron, and took down the enemy, but in the process, he also lost his body armor. Meanwhile, the four people hiding in place also encountered an accident. Although Jack took down an enemy, he was attacked by an ambushing terrorist. Mary shot and killed the enemy, then rushed over to check on Jack. She was at a loss for what to do and shouted to her teammates for help. Clearly, they were in the virtual world, yet Jack was screaming in agony. Mary stepped forward and took off his helmet, only to find that he had no injuries in the real world. Just as they were at a loss for what to do next, David rushed back in time, administered a first aid injection, and saved Jack's life. But this also made Jack realize that this might not be an ordinary virtual game, because at that moment, he felt like he was actually going to die. Jack's words aroused everyone's suspicion. Since David was the only former soldier present, they wondered if this was some kind of human experiment by the company, and if David was an undercover agent for it. Such suspicions made David extremely angry, and he left the team in a fit of rage. Little did they know that during this time, the dead terrorists had already been resurrected. Since David hadn't put his mask back on, he couldn't see the virtual world, and a terrorist attacked him from behind, and a sharp pain surged through his body. David tried to take out his first aid injection, only to find he hadn't brought it with him. He crawled with difficulty toward his teammates, hoping to ask for help. However, on the way, because he failed to use the first aid injection within the time limit, he was executed by the helmet through an electric discharge. At this time, the situation for Jack and the others was also not optimistic. Those terrorists suddenly appeared and launched an attack. Everyone was frightened. The scene instantly became extremely chaotic. Finally, Aaron got lucky. He threw a grenade and killed the enemy. When they calmed down, everyone hurried to look for David, only to find his body. At this moment, everyone confirmed that this wasn't an ordinary game. While examining David's body, Bob even discovered the secret of the helmet. It turned out that this helmet could not only transmit the vibration sensation during combat, but also kill by discharging electricity. Moreover, no matter what everyone did, they couldn't take the helmet off. In order to get rid of this damn helmet, Bob asked Jack to hit his head with a fire extinguisher to try to destroy the helmet. But just then, the virtual officer suddenly appeared. He reprimanded Bob in front of everyone, warning everyone not to delude themselves into being deserters. The only way now was to clear the game. Everyone united and walked toward the 23rd floor. Strangely enough, along the way after that they didn't encounter any enemies. It wasn't until they reached the 19th floor that the virtual officer appeared again. It turned out that there was a gas leak on this floor. Players couldn't use handguns, otherwise it would cause an explosion. They could only use cold weapons to kill the enemies. Fortunately, after resolving all the enemies on this floor without incident, everyone's mood was extremely heavy. Lisa, the most timid one, kept crying. Instead of dismissing her, Mary told Lisa to stay behind her to protect her. In this way, the group arrived at the 17th floor. The number of enemies here was more than that on all the previous floors. Aaron was even shot in the abdomen by an enemy and fell to the ground. But under the enemy's suppressive fire, no one could rush up to rescue him recklessly. In the end, Mary decided to take the risk alone. She asked Jack to cover her. As soon as Jack rushed out, he was hit by the enemy. It seemed like they were caught in a dilemma. Fortunately, Jason stepped in, shot and killed the enemy in the dark, and gave Jack a first aid injection. Meanwhile, Mary successfully rescued Aaron. Now Jason's score was the highest in the game, but no one except him cared about this score. The group, who had just gone through a fierce battle, chose to rest on the spot for a while. Bob took off his mask and looked at the busy traffic outside the building, feeling worried. But at this moment, Jack thought of a solution. He picked up the butt of his gun and frantically smashed it against the glass. Bob also joined in, using the box behind him to ram the glass. They finally managed to knock a crack in the glass, but the system detected their anomaly again. The virtual officer appeared once more, and this time, he even knocked Bob down the stairs, warning everyone that if they violated the rules again, he would turn all of them into corpses next time. Worse still, Bob had fractured his lower leg from falling down the stairs and couldn't continue moving. He didn't want to hold everyone back, so he asked them to hide him and move on. Little did they know that after everyone left, Bob closed his eyes due to severe injuries. The rest of the group finally reached the 11th floor of the building, but just as they were replenishing their equipment at the supply point, Jason, due to carelessness, was shot in the buttocks by an enemy. Lisa, frightened by the gunshot, left everyone behind and ran to the bathroom to hide. After everyone finally managed to take down the enemies, they realized Lisa was gone. Mary was worried that Lisa might be in danger and hurried to look for her. However, at this moment, a terrorist had already entered the bathroom to search for targets. As she heard the sound approaching closer and closer, Lisa finally lost control of her emotions and rushed out to take him down by surprise. After reaching the next floor, the group didn't hurry to move forward, but took a break on the spot to recuperate, and they also began to share their own stories. Yet upon further questioning, they noticed something was wrong. It turned out Mary had lost both parents and was an orphan, and Jack was in the same situation. Not only had his parents passed away, but his girlfriend had also died in an accident. Aaron lived with his grandmother who had Alzheimer's disease. As for Jason, he lived alone because he was divorced, and Carl was also an orphan. Jack instantly realized this was a premeditated scheme. The company had gathered a group of lonely people together, so that even if they died, no one would care, but knowing this now was useless, for the game still had to go on. When the group reached the next floor, they found the officer was beating a prisoner of war here. It turned out there was a bomb under the building's foundation. If it exploded, the entire building would collapse, and everyone would die here. Only the POW knew the password to defuse the bomb, so they needed to get the password out of the POW. Once the bomb was defused, they would be able to go home. Now that the hope of going home was within sight, Carl began to torture the POW, but the POW gave them the wrong password, causing Aaron to activate the detonation device. Now they only had 30 minutes to manually defuse the bomb, otherwise everyone would die. But they still had 9 floors left to conquer. Half an hour was simply not enough time. Jason blamed all the mistakes on Aaron. It seemed an internal conflict was about to break out within the team. Just then, Carl suddenly heard the officer's voice. Following the sound, he discovered that the officer had actually opened the elevator for them. Carl immediately informed everyone, and everyone rushed into the elevator safely. But things didn't go as smoothly as expected. The elevator had an accident halfway and stopped on the 5th floor. Jason used all his strength to pry open the elevator doors, while Jack and the others managed to escape. He and Aaron were trapped inside. They thought they were done for, but the elevator started again and sent the two to the 3rd floor. Since Mary still had the first aid injections with her, Aaron didn't dare to move, but Jason didn't care. He took Aaron and rushed out. They now only had 24 minutes left to escape. The two groups headed toward the 1st floor separately. At this moment, Jack and the others finally reached the 4th floor, but they encountered an accident. A terrorist appeared and threw a smoke grenade. Yet the smoky scene stirred up the deep-seated nightmare in Jack's heart, reminding him of his girlfriend who died in a fire. In the end, it was only after Mary kept encouraging him that she pulled him along to move on to the next floor. As for Jason on the 3rd floor, he simply threw away his weapon after running out of rifle ammunition. But without the support of heavy weapons, filled with fear, he even threatened Aaron to use himself as a shield to cover his advance. When passing a corner, Aaron was shot in the abdomen by an enemy. Jason didn't dare to go up to rescue him, and could only hide in the corner, listening to Aaron's voice gradually fade away. Only after hearing the voices of Jack and the others, did he quietly follow behind. But the situation for Jack and his group was also not optimistic. They had used up all their first aid injections, and had very little ammunition left. During this time, Lisa volunteered to go check the rear area. She found a first aid injection in a room, and was just about to take it when Jason appeared. In order to take the first aid injection for himself, Jason killed Lisa. But just as he was about to leave, Jack came over looking for Lisa. Jason lied to deceive Jack, but while he went to fight the enemies, Jack happened to find Lisa's body. Jack rushed up and grappled with Jason, but he was no match for Jason. Just as Jason was about to kill Jack too, the officer suddenly appeared at the critical moment, and executed him on the spot for Jason's abuse of ammunition and killing a comrade. Now only 3 people were left in the entire team, and there were only 7 minutes left until the explosion. The 3 finally reached the 1st floor, which was also the final level. After replenishing their guns and ammunition, the 3 engaged in the final battle with the enemies in the warehouse. With the experience from the previous more than 20 floors, they cooperated more tacitly with each other. With mutual cooperation, they took down all the enemies, but at this point, only 3 minutes were left until the explosion. Yet just as they lowered their guard and walked toward the bomb, a van suddenly appeared, and another group of terrorists emerged to attack them. Jack and Mary were unfortunately shot. Only the last first aid injection remained with Jack, but he chose not to use it on himself and instead saved Mary. As for Carl, who was hiding in the corner, he found a rocket launcher at the last moment, and successfully eliminated the enemies. At this point, only 10 seconds were left until the explosion. Carl used his last strength to rush toward the bomb, and pressed the switch to stop the bomb at the last second. The game finally came to an end. But what no one expected was that Carl was the mastermind behind this game. A group of men in black appeared, picked him up, and took Mary away after hypnotizing her. As for the 6 killed players, all of them were put into body bags to be taken away. When Mary woke up, Carl placed a bag full of cash in front of her and announced her victory. However, Mary didn't want the money. She killed a bodyguard who was about to inject her with sleeping pills, then snatched his pistol. Then she turned off all the lights in the warehouse. After taking down all of Carl's men, she took his life, and finally walked out of the darkness alone. When the game is no longer virtual, survival becomes the ultimate challenge. A seemingly ordinary VR game test turned out to be an inescapable deathmatch. With virtual reality technology as its outer framework, The call-up deeply explores the in-depth themes of technological ethics and human nature. The 2016 British sci-fi film The Call-up was written and directed by Charles Barker. It turns its focus to the emerging virtual reality technology of that time. The film tells the story of a group of veteran gamers who are invited to participate in an immersive game test called virtual reality shooting, only to find themselves trapped in a life-or-death struggle they can't quit. The film's protagonist, Jack, is a veteran gamer. After his girlfriend's death, his life becomes dull and boring, and he indulges in the gaming world all day long. He receives a mysterious invitation card, asking him to take part in the test of the virtual reality shooting game. Driven by curiosity, he follows the instructions to reach the destination, and meets other players who have also been invited. After putting on the amazing motion capture suits, which can perceive everything that happens in the virtual game from all aspects, the players put on their helmets, and instantly enter a game world different from reality. A stern virtual soldier appears and tells them their mission. As soldiers of Team Alpha, they must eliminate the Muslim terrorists in the building and reach the first floor. And the player with the highest score will win a $100,000 prize. As the game progresses, the players discover that gunshots in the game cause real physical pain, the helmets can't be removed, and dying in the game leads to actual death in the real world. They gradually realize that all the selected players are lonely people. No one would notice even if they died, which allows the organizers to carry out secret killings with impunity. Against the backdrop of the widespread popularity of VR technology, the call-up puts forward a thought-provoking hypothesis. When virtual reality games have advanced enough to integrate with players' nerves and transmit real sensations, if exploited by criminals, they could cause players to die for real during the game. Essentially, the film revolves around the concept of a high-stakes one-life clear game that can't be paused. It cleverly taps into people's underlying fears of emerging technologies, and brings the issue of technological ethics to the forefront. Could technological progress exceed our control? What price will we pay when the line between the virtual and the real becomes blurred? As a low-budget independent film, The Call-up has obvious strengths and weaknesses. The film has a forward-looking concept, and its understanding and portrayal of VR technology are relatively mature. On a limited budget, the film successfully creates a tense and oppressive atmosphere, allowing the audience to also feel the player's despair and fear. As for its weaknesses, the film has been criticized for its conservative story tropes, failing to fully tap the potential of its theme. Some viewers argue that it stretches a 9-minute short film concept into an 86-minute feature, resulting in slow plot progression and many plot holes. It also lacks depth in exploring human nature, failing to adequately portray the complexity of human nature in extreme circumstances. The Call-up was released in 2016, a year known as the first year of VR, when VR technology was widely applied in fields such as the military, healthcare, education, and film. Unlike traditional films, VR films have three key features: interactivity, simulation, and immersion, breaking the limitations of the traditional film frame and offering a 360-degree panoramic view. A true VR film should be interactive, a panoramic video with a storyline. From this perspective, although The Call-up takes VR as its theme, it isn't a VR film itself, but a traditional linear narrative sci-fi thriller. Despite its flaws, as a low-budget independent film, it raises thought-provoking questions. In an era where technology increasingly permeates all aspects of our lives, the film reminds us to reflect on the boundaries of technology and its potential risks. If you are a viewer interested in themes of technological ethics, or enjoy thrilling survival game-style films, The Call-up is worth your time. However, if you expect a masterpiece that deeply explores human nature or technological issues, you may feel slightly disappointed. In the end, The Call-up warns us that, while we enthusiastically embrace virtual reality technology, we shouldn't completely abandon our perception and control of the real world. For when the line between the virtual and the real becomes blurred, the most dangerous thing may not be the technology itself, but the dark side of human nature that controls the technology.